So thank you so much for spending part of your morning with us. My name is Jon Benedict. This is Moran Goldboim. I think you need to get into the camera. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, my name is Moran Goldboim. I'm a product manager for Red Hat Virtualization. I'm mostly dealing with the management aspect of the product and integration with other Red Hat portfolio products.
And I'm Jon Benedict. I'm the technical marketing manager for Red Hat Virtualization. I do a lot of evangelism for the product and a lot of cross-portfolio work, making sure that it works its way into the portfolio. So today we're going to talk to you about how to automate Red Hat Virtualization with CloudForms and Ansible. So we're going to provide you with a little bit of introduction and background because while we do want to make sure that the core of the presentation is around some demos that we have prepared for you. We want to make sure that we have the proper background for those demos. And we'll leave some time for Q&A. I think the 45 minutes is going to go by fairly quickly. So introduction. So why are we doing this? For those of you that are in the audience that are in operations, the administrators, engineers, raise your hand. Engineers, administrators, operations. That's what I thought. Awesome. Welcome. I think most of you at this point are probably being asked to be service providers outside of what you originally thought you were getting into the careers for. And that's fine. I think it kind of provides new and unique challenges. But it kind of stretches what you thought you were going to do. And I think when you're being asked to do more with less, it kind of makes you scratch your head sometimes, and it certainly makes you do things throughout the day that kind of ties you up in ways that you wish you had more time to do some of the bigger things when you're getting tied up with the little things. From a developer standpoint, any developers in the room? I thought so. We always get some developers in the room. Welcome. You're always being asked to be more productive, and that always requires automation as well. And from a line of business standpoint, it's all about being challenged to deliver services, digital services, consulting services, services to the business, and it's all in the effort to get products to the market faster. So how do we help you address all of those challenges and provide that greater value? What we want to do with the automation is to help you guys regain control. Not only of things like network resources, compute resources, storage resources, but things like time. Because like I said just a minute ago, taking up all of those little resources, those little activities that chew up your day and take you away from those things that you want to get done, those larger strategic initiatives, you also want to get a handle of things like cost. So we do things like that while connecting with existing investments. So while you want to invest in maybe some newer technologies, all of those newer things have to be able to attach to things that you already have. How many of you have unlimited budget? Yeah, smart aleck in the back of the room. That's part of my point here. You always have to think about, I have this much budget and I have this much to do. So accelerating service delivery is all about the ability to provide value to those internal customers. Because if you can't, they will continue to circumvent you and do things like create shadow IT. So if we can help you create services that provide value, they can go to a self-service portal and get those services and those IT needs that they have to have and get those done in a timely fashion, then you can regain control that way. And do all of this without vendor lock-in. So yes, I'm talking about things like the software, avoiding software lock-in, but I'm also talking about things like avoiding business lock-in through fine print contracts and other business behaviors that prevent you from being able to introduce new technology to your environment. So what is Red Hat Virtualization? Anybody already using Rev in the environment? Fantastic. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Red Hat Virtualization, it's a software-defined platform that's utilized to virtualize both Linux and Windows-based workloads. It allows you to automate workload balancing. It also allows you to very easily automate all of the processes. So if you want to go through and point and click, that's great. If you want to go through a REST API, if you want to use something like Ansible, CloudForms to automate all of the steps, you can do that as well. Anybody using CloudForms? Okay. Several of you. That's great. So CloudForms is a management platform used to work over all of your hybrid environments. So not only does it work with Red Hat tools, obviously, but it works also with things like Azure. It works with VMware. It works with OpenStack. Obviously, Red Hat Virtualization, and plenty of other things. So it's not just a Red Hat tool. But it's meant to allow you to do things like regain control, provide those self-service portals, and really implement things like security and compliance policies in a way that doesn't distract or disrupt your day, but provide you with that consistency. And then Ansible. Any Ansible users? That hand went up quick. That's awesome. So lots of Ansible users. So Ansible is an IT automation engine that's meant to be very easy to implement. A very low level of effort is meant to go into actually learning it. If you've ever done anything in Bash, PHP, Python, PowerShell, you can implement Ansible. You can look at the code and understand exactly what's being done. And you can replicate, you can change, you can modify, and you can pull down.
Maybe just a couple of words on the Red Hat Virtualization integration with Ansible. So what we have tried to do with Red Hat Virtualization is actually integrate the current Ansible capabilities into the product. And what that means is, based on our Python SDK, we built modules to actually control in every object of the system and being able to automate it. Now, we released those modules around Rev 4.1, and we released it as an upstream project, something that we can gain some feedback from the community. Now, with Rev 4.2, we are planning to support those modules also for the downstream version, meaning that if you guys have any problems with the modules themselves, it is supported and it will be fixed by the Rev team. More than that, we are providing Ansible roles, kind of a prescribed way to doing manual, repeatedly long operations. And this is something we provide as a package within the product since 4.1, and we are planning on extending it with the coming release of 4.2.
So he's mentioned Rev 4.2 a couple times. Anybody know when it's coming out?
Yeah, can you tell us?
I just wanted to see if next week on the 15th. So we're very excited about that. We wanted it out before Red Hat Summit, but we had to get a couple of things right. But next week on the 15th, we'll be very excited to release Red Hat Virtualization 4.2. So user stories and demos. So this is where we want to spend the bulk of our time, as well as the Q&A. So we want to tell a little bit of a story. We want to do this with around our hero in operations. So really, at the end of the day, all our hero wants to do is do his job, right? He wants to get his job done simply, and he wants to do it securely. So we've got a bunch of demos that we've put together that do things like deploy CloudForms, create some templates, deploy an application, do some maintenance, and of course automate security and compliance. So this seems this may not seem flashy, but at the core of it, the first thing that I want to make sure that you understand is these are things that chew up the days of folks just like yourselves in operations that take you away from some of the strategic efforts that a lot of us want to get done. The second thing that I want to impart to you is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the surface of what we can accomplish with things that are not only out of the box that you can do in some cases, or in this case, things that we've done with a little bit of customization. So Whatever you can think up, we can probably accomplish one way or the other in terms of automation, in terms of customization. So this first thing that we're gonna show you is for CloudForms, we want to automate the deployment of the actual CloudForms appliance in Red Hat Virtualization. So everything about the actual deployment that we're going to actually automate it from soup to nuts, from beginning to end.
So maybe let's talk a bit about the problem we are trying to solve here. So when an IT guy wants to deploy a new product into the data center, he needs to have knowledge. He needs to have knowledge about the existing infrastructure, and he needs to have knowledge about the product he would like to install. Elements like how do I bring it to a production level deployment. Many of the times the process itself is very long. It takes a lot of time, and with a minor mistake that you are doing, you need to repeat it all over again. And what we try to provide here is actually a prescribed way to deploy CloudForms on top of Rev. This is going to be really applicable also with the new Rev suite that we are introducing, which is a bundle between Red Hat Virtualization and CloudForms. And it's meant to ease the installation process and let you focus about the work that you want to do and not consume your time around the deployment aspect. So how do I download the image, upload it into Rev, create a VM out of it? What is the VM specification? Do I need to configure it with high availability? What is the disk layout looks like? What type of disk do I need to put for the database versus the temp or the logs or the appliance itself? So we try to solve those parts. Another part that we are doing here is actually creating the VM infrastructure. In this case, it is a single VM, and we are utilizing the Ansible capabilities to deploy an end-tier application on top of it. So we are basically adding the virtual machine we have created to the Ansible inventory, and that way we simply we initialize the appliance. So it's not only the VM infrastructure, we initialize the appliance, we configure it based on same defaults, but also values that you can override and provide. And at the end, we configure Rev as a provider within CloudForms. So once you get it up and running, it's really easy to just start working with it. So this demo actually is pure Ansible Rev. It doesn't involve CloudForms, just on the level that it's deployed the application. So that's our starting point. So as you can see, that's the Obvious Ansible repository upstream. We provide those packages downstream as well. You can see here a simple example of the playbook. The one we will run is going to look really similar to that. This is the Rev instance. That's the new Rev UI, by the way, with the sidebar navigation. I guess you haven't seen it before, but that's the version we're going to soon be released. And you can see all the specification of the disk layout and how should it look like in general. What are the enable manager IQ roles we would like to deploy there. And now we are actually running the playbook. So the first thing we're going to do is download the QCOW appliance image from CDN, just providing the link to that, and upload the image as a VM disk to Red Hat Virtualization. Once we have done that part, a VM is created based on the specification, memory, CPUs, cores that we have provided. And using Cloud Init, we are actually configuring the host name, IP addresses if needed. So Cloud Init is a very powerful tool on this layout. Jon has added this clip and just skipped the part, but in this part we are actually doing all the configuration of CloudForms to a production level with Rev configure within. So you can, once you've got the IP, the VM is running, you can simply log in using the password you provided within the playbook, log into CloudForms. Right now you can see everything is empty because it's just created. It's not started populating the data. And you can see that Rev is already configured as a provider within CloudForms, which is really nice. This way you can start just working with CloudForms as a cloud management platform and start doing what you want to do with it.
So obviously this is edited down to a little under 3 minutes. How long did it take you to actually do this? It was about 20 minutes?
It's about 20 minutes or so. It's important to remember that if you've done a mistake, nothing bad has happened. You simply make the correction within the playbook and rerun it again versus, going over all the needed steps before. So it's really easy, it's really intuitive, and make our life easier in terms of the knowing of CloudForms and how to deploy it.
Yay, wireless. Oh, boy.
So maybe, yeah. Walking? Yeah.
Come on. You can do it.
Okay, so let's start talking about the second use case. You can see it's really small down there, and it's basically automating template creation. Again, task which sounds simple, right? You want to download an image, to upload it to Rev, and create yourself a template. But this is many of the times the operator work to do, right? So developer comes to the IT person and tell him, man, I need a template of Rel 7 Ubuntu CentOS machine to run on Rev, or I need to update an existing template. How do I do that? So beforehand, it was the IT operational task to do. But now with CloudForms, a really nice thing that we can do is actually combine the Ansible playbook, the integration with Rev, and using CloudForms provide a UI or a service dialog, exposing this as a service to the developer persona, and basically moving on the task to be fully automated and fully supported using self-service portal.
So one of the things I want to add in here is, again, this is one of those things that can just chew up your morning. Trying to create a template so that you can duplicate the images, so you can spin up a whole bunch of VMs. This creating a template is something that is at least 7 to 10 different individual steps that we've automated here into 1 or 2 steps that you can set off on a second monitor and just kind of look over while you're doing something else that you deem more important. So you can just kind of kick it off and then go off and do something that's more strategic for your day. Or you can kick it off before you go to lunch and then come back and it's already taken care of because it takes just a few minutes.
Do you want to jump to the demo?
Yeah, trying to, but there we go. Sorry about the wireless, guys.
So again, this is an existing Ansible role which we provide upstream and downstream. What we have done is creating a service dialog within CloudForms with the custom UI to support it. We just copied the image URL from CDN, post it into the custom dialog we created. So here you see the image details, and And basically, we are moving the parameters we have created in the service dialog into the Ansible playbook. So this type of integration gives you the ability to provide a UI to the Ansible playbooks you wish to run, as well as exposing it to using a CloudForms RBAC system to the different user personas you've got on your DC. So here you can see we are just sucking up the information from CloudForms VMDB with regards to the cluster name, storage domain, and all you need to do is fill out the disk size, the memory, and the CPU needed for that template to be created with, and we just shoot the playbook. Jon, we've got a shopping cart here, and maybe you want to add a couple of words here?
Yeah, the shopping cart experience, if you've not used CloudForms, it's no different than ordering anything else online. You add a service to your shopping cart and you confirm your order. You can go so far as to add chargeback to your environment so that you know exactly what resources you're using. Or you can use what we jokingly refer to as shameback, which means that you're not actually charging anybody any real money, but you can compare what different departments are actually using in comparison to other environments, thus the shameback instead of chargeback. So we always found that to be humorous, but I don't hear anybody laughing, so maybe that's just me.
So that's the CloudForms service dialog. So you can see how easily it is to actually order a service from here. In this case, the template. You can just follow the std output of the Ansible playbooks within the screen and watch it going. So here we see that the playbooks is over, the template is created. Another great option here is you've got an option to specify how would you like to retire this service. So what happens when the user is done with this kind of template or with this type of service? What Ansible playbooks do I want to run to tear it down or to remove it if needed? And here we can actually see the template within CloudForms already populated into the VMDB. Now, those are usually long operations, and that's the reason we are using edited kind of clips here. Yeah. But again, this is very kind of simple thing to do. You need to know CloudForms. So CloudForms, as a cloud management platform, comes with everything, with all the tooling that you need to in order to do this type of automation. But you need to know a bit about, it gives you lots of options, lots of capabilities, but you need to know your way around it a bit.
So this next demo is really kind of a core job description for anybody that's in operations, system administration, system engineering, and it's deploying applications, deploying workloads. And so we want to be able to help streamline those efforts as well. So this is really using Rev, CloudForms, and Ansible in concert to perform that function.
Right. So that's a really great capability, which Ansible as a platform gives us. Remember the entire application that I was talking about a couple of minutes before? So this part actually gives you the option not to do it on a single VM, but take couple of VMs needed to run your application. In this case, we were using a web server deployment, so an Apache server with 2 databases. Ansible has a huge ecosystem, which provides many guided way to deploy those type of applications with Rev capabilities to lay out the infrastructure and then utilize those as an Ansible inventory items, great things can be achieved. Now, what we are showing it to you is really basic stuff, right? It's like 3 VMs and deploying the application on top. With Ansible ecosystem, you can do much more, connecting to the networking, to the storage layout, IPMI, DNS. You can practically do your all operations. So that's just a simple example. And again, it's how do we provide this service to our end users, right? We want to expose it in the service catalog. So here we can see the example playbooks. Maybe we just skip back 1 minute. Come on. Okay, so here you can see just the specification of the VM. So we are using VM profiles. We define the database name, what cluster would it run, what would be the root path for it, what's going to be the domain, which template will it be using. Very, very straightforward, and there are lots of other parameters you can feed in here. One of which is the anti-affinity, right? Elements like we don't want the two databases to run on the same host. So additional things that we would like to do is to configure anti-affinity between them. So this role, the VM infrastructure role, gives you those type of capabilities. And what we're going to use on top is an Apache 2 deployment. Again, a role which is available as part of Galaxy, Ansible Galaxy, and upstream as well. So what you see here is the Ansible playbooks. The first part is the overt Ansible, and the second part is setting up Apache on top of those VMs that we have created. We are exposing this as a service in CloudForms, and you can see the service dialog, so the user can just go in, order himself an Apache deployment, and then basically do everything by himself without the need of the IT operational guy to set up the 3 VMs, start deploying the application on top. So it's really streamlined all the operational process here. It does lots of things. It does the tagging of the VMs on Rev. So really utilizing the entire capabilities of this type of combination in order to create those type of VMs. Now, again, Cloud Init is used here in order to initialize the VM with the right parameter, configure the root password, and do all the magic behind the scenes. And you can see the VMs basically are up, and utilizing the Ansible role for deploying Apache, we've got everything set up. So now we can just take the IP of the Apache VM, open up a web browser, and just browse to that Apache. Port 8080, yeah, it usually helps. And here we go. So really simple example, but just to demonstrate the capabilities and the power you can achieve with that kind of combination.
Okay, how many people absolutely love to do maintenance? Got one person. You're such a liar. So that's something else that is pretty core to anybody that's in operations, system administration. So this is something else that we absolutely want to automate. We want to streamline. From the Rev perspective, there's multiple steps when you go through and you're going to update the host in a cluster. And one of the biggest requests was to have a rolling upgrade function. That's essentially what we're doing here. So without that rolling upgrade function, you're literally left with having to babysit the upgrade process. This can take many hours, depending on how many hosts in the cluster there are, how many VMs there are, so on and so forth. In this case, just like the template process, you kick it off maybe with your first coffee break, and you could potentially be done before you go to lunch. Or if it's a large cluster, it could be done by the time you come back for lunch. So let's go ahead and kick this one off.
Yeah, so upgrading a Red cluster is a time-consuming operation. You need to go host by host, basically evacuate all the VMs from it, make sure that you don't have any pinned VMs, pinned VM to host. You don't want anyone else to start a VM while you're doing this type of operation. And you want everything back to normal once you are done with this operation. What we're trying to do here is to streamline everything so you can have a click button experience once upgrading the cluster. CloudForms gives us the ability to create a custom buttons. So apart from the service catalog, you can actually add to the operational view buttons, custom buttons, which will operate Ansible playbooks or open up a service dialog that you can fill in. And here we simply see the operation and the provisioning monitoring using CloudForms and the STD output, as we saw before. And we can actually see the rev side of the things, how is the host is evacuated from the VM, from the different VMs, the upgrade operation running on it. It checks whether it needs an upgrade or not at all. Does the reboot on the host to apply the new patches, the new kernel if needed, and then basically start. So here we see the evacuation of the VMs.
So the first host in the cluster has all of its VMs pushed to the other hosts. Then the update is pulled down for that host. It gets updated, it gets rebooted, it gets verified. Then the next host in the cluster, the process starts over again until everything is completed in that cluster, and that's thus the rolling upgrade process.
Right. There is also a maintenance policy which is enforced on the cluster, which actually prevents anyone from starting new workloads or new VMs on this specific cluster, because right now it is under maintenance, which simplifies things operationally. You can see here it's an hosted engine environment. And we are taking care of the hosted engine. Hosted engine means that the Red management, is running as a VM within the Red cluster. And here we are taking care of also migrating the management piece between the hosts and streamline the entire operation. So that's mostly a time-saving operation, which helps you not to focus on doing it one host after the other, but just shoot it, take a look once in a while, see what's going on, but continue with your meaningful task and focus on your meaningful work that you need to do.
Okay, so last interactive question here. How many of you are absolutely security experts? That's what I thought. I'm the same way. I consider myself to have some 101 security knowledge, maybe a little bit of 201 security knowledge, but there's just no way. I never considered myself to be a security expert, and I really depended on other people for that knowledge. So that's this last demo is all about taking, if you've got a security team in your data center, a security team in your organization, and basically taking their expertise and their requirements, or if you have compliance policies that are dictated by either your industry, your healthcare, if you're financial sector, or if you have some corporate mandated policies, and being able to implement those in a consistent fashion using CloudForms. So what we're doing here is using a system of conditions and actions, which is to say you have a condition, which is just a test. And then you either pass the test or you fail the test. And depending on the outcome of that, you have an action. What's going to happen if you pass or fail that test? Now, in this case, that condition is triggered by either the reboot or the starting of a virtual machine, and we do a smart state analysis of that virtual machine to trigger that conditional test. And so we're going to go through that really quickly.
Right. So here we are using core CloudForm capabilities. We are not using any fancy Ansible. Simply call CloudForms, which help us to do the compliance. So say that you've got a VM which is not running SE Linux in your data center. How will you find it out ever? CloudForms, as Jon just mentioned, has capabilities to trigger out automated compliance policies and taking actions upon those. Everything is really, you can customize everything, lots of events types. You can trigger actions, elements like the entire VM operations, as well as sending an email, running an Ansible playbook. Basically, whatever you want, it's also extendable with Ruby automation code. So it really gives lots of capabilities. What we try to do here is just simply monitor the SE Linux configuration file. And as Jon said, once the VM rebooted or power on, we simply run smart state analysis. Smart state analysis basically reads lots of the data from the VM. And based on this data, take a decision whether it's compliant or not to run in the data center. Here we use the tagging mechanism to tag it as a non-secure VM. And actually see that. So once SE Linux is working, you see that it's compliant and everything is great. What we're going to do now is change the SE Linux configuration really naively, right? We try to keep it really low level and simple here. We can do much more than that. So we see that right now the status is not compliant. We can look at the tags. We issue a non-secure VM tag on that specific VM. We can do the same for hosts as well. So say that your hypervisor is not running the latest kernel or the latest QMOK VM, and you would like to have a compliance policy around that and make some email notification. It's really easy to do.
See if I can't get this wireless to... It's almost as if like 7,000 people are trying to connect at once.
Not connected to the bar so far. Password is Red Hat 18, all lowercase. Try that.
Maybe. Anyone? Viewer?
Wireless.
Okay, well. I don't know what's going on.
So Jon, where does it put our hero?
So hopefully this puts our hero in a much better spot. And ultimately, I hope things like this would put you guys in a much better spot and help you kind of take control of your days and your weeks and kind of reduce the late nights, reduce the amount of cold pizza you're eating and other related things, right? Because this is ultimately about helping you take control of the little and even the big things that kind of consume your day. Kind of remove, automate the tactical things, allow you to focus on the more strategic things. So as I mentioned earlier, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. There's no way that we could have provided examples of everything that you could have done, but I'm hoping that we kind of inspired you to think about the things that you could automate using Rev and CloudForms and CloudForms, Rev, and Ansible in your particular environment. With everything from compliance firewalls to the infrastructure itself, so on and so forth. So with that, we're going to go ahead and open things up for Q&A. I think we have a few more minutes here. Not much, but I think we have a few more minutes for Q&A. You have a question there in the back, red shirt? So the question is if it's converged with Gluster, those, I don't think, were those hyper-converged? Or
No.
that was just hosted engine.
Currently, it's hosted engine. We are planning to invest more in the Ansible integration with Gluster. This is something we are actively working on to streamline the entire deployment operation and usage aspect of it. But it's not yet available.
Oh, look, wireless is up again.
So it takes care about the hypervisor currently. So it's leave the engine out of the game for that perspective. And yes, it can take you between minor versions as well, not just these things.
And are there also playbooks for handling and upgrading the engine itself?
We are taking care of all deployment paths right now. So we've got an Ansible roles which actually configure your entire cluster, taking care of the data center, the clusters, the host configuration, networks, permissions, you name it. But we are now trying to actually tackle also the deployment aspect, the RPM and the overt engine configuration aspect.
Blue shirt, we'll get you in a second.
Okay, so if I understand you right, you're looking for the model support for the ability to attach direct LANs, right?
Or whether through the Red Hat interface.
Right. So currently, I think that we don't have it, but I will write it down as a gap, and we'll try to take care of it.
I was wondering if you could compare this approach to using Ansible Tower. When would you use that?
Okay. So again, what we try to demonstrate here is using the Ansible engine, the core Ansible engine without the Ansible Tower. So it's the embedded Ansible integration within CloudForms. Tower, one of your main motivation is if you've got more complex workflows, which you need a UI and RBAC system to utilize it for. And the Ansible Tower gives you those monitoring, tracking capabilities which currently are not available with the native integration with the core Ansible.
I would also add in where if it's a more complex environment, or if the Rev environment was just one of many platforms that you're using, so you have Ansible driving Rev over here, and Ansible driving network over here, and Ansible driving database over here, and Ansible. So Tower being able to centrally drive all of the automation for multiple environments.
It's a great point. So take, for example, if you want to integrate ServiceNow, right? Registration for the VM IP on some IPMI service, and making sure that the DNS records are clean. So if it's a more complex environment which needs more handling, and the code has many passes to go through, this is where Ansible Tower can help a lot.
So I think we're at the time. I think we're a minute over. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us, and enjoy the rest of Red Hat Summit.
Thank you.